Hello and welcome back to Arches. We'll be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is after Cameron was attacked by the static monster. At least I think that's what it was. And he received a whole bunch of, well, not visions, but he was hearing a whole bunch of weird stuff. And during that time, Devon and Artie were, panicking and trying to figure out what to do to help Cameron. But eventually, Cameron started breathing again because the monster apparently was stopping his breathing. But it seems that all of this was going on right outside a certain bear's trailer. And if you know Echo, if you've seen any of my videos, or if you've read Echo yourself, or if you've seen anyone else's videos, then you would know who this bear is, or at least have some idea. Especially because I've mentioned said bear already in previous videos. Which, if you haven't watched, there's gonna be a little link in one of the corners telling you, to go to the beginning of the playlist with all the other videos. And the short story, which just showed up in the public update. So yeah, so I put it at the very, very beginning of all the videos because it's sort of like the not prequel, but it kind of begins the story. Anyways, well, without further ado, let's continue and see what happens when Brian the bear shows up. Devon stares, feeling himself become oddly detached from the situation. His mind is still overwhelmed with what had just happened to Cameron. It's what he wants to focus on, but the shotgun has his attention now, and for just a moment, Devon thinks about just running. If he applied logic to the situation, he would assume the other bear wouldn't shoot, but something in his eyes. Something is off. So Dev says what he hopes will make clear to this other bear that they're not a threat.
We need help. Our friend is unconscious and we are stranded.
The old-looking bear focuses on him for several seconds. Devon hears the rustling of dead leaves and foliage next to him as Arturo moves. Suddenly, the bear swings the shotgun around to point to Devon's left. Don't you move, boy! Hey, I'm sorry, don't shoot! Arturo sounds terrified, his voice strained and high-pitched. The old bear stares at Artie for several seconds before pointing the shotgun down towards the ground, but only slightly. The bear gestures at the coyote. You doing something to him?
What? Doing something? No! We are trying to help him. Something attacked him. We need to get him help.
The old bear grimaces. What do you mean, something? Dev hesitates, at least until the gun is shifted in his direction.
No, wait!
I'm not waiting. You show up on my property making all kinds of sounds, and you're standing there with the knocked out yo. Hey, we didn't do anything to him. We're trying to help. The bear growls. I don't care if you're trying to help him or trying to fuck him. I want to know the truth, not that something happened. The standoff continues for a few more seconds before Dev jumps in again.
It was something dark, like a shadow. I called it something because I didn't get a chance to see it, but it jumped on him and disappeared.
Devon realizes what he's saying as he says it and half expects to be shot for saying something so stupid.
I swear to God, that's what happened.
The old bear's eyes flick to Artie, and the cat quickly throws his support behind the ridiculous statement. Yeah, that's what happened. I don't know what the fuck it was, but it was there. It was dark and had red eyes or some shit. I don't even think we should be out here right now. Devon, once again, wants to tell Artie to shut up, that saying more is only going to make the situation worse. Instead of getting angry again, though, an odd expression comes over the other bear's face, one that Devon can't quite decipher. Then he finally speaks, casually bringing the shotgun up to rest over his shoulder. And it jumped on him? That yote there?
Yeah.
Alrighty, so I'm guessing y'all are on some drugs or some shit.
No.
Using out in the heat ain't ever a smart idea.
We weren't.
Devon trails off, realizing that this doesn't matter at all right now.
We need to get him help. He's not waking up.
Devon kneels, resting Cameron on the ground as he half props him up, needing to rest his tiring arms. There's a pause in which this other bear just stares down at them, a pause that's long enough that Dev opens his mouth to speak again. But that's finally when the older bear seems to break out of his trance. Shit, of course. Sorry about the gun and all. It's just that I always get a bunch of coots on my property every now and then. Devon looks up at the suddenly friendly bear. In the back of his mind, he thinks he can almost hear sirens. Very familiar sirens. Shit's not even loaded. The bear grunts as he brings the shotgun forward, pointing it back towards the ground before it seems to break in half as the stock suddenly drops down. The bear turns to show them that the barrels are empty. That actually does make Devon feel a bit better, even if the gun had been pointed at them just minutes ago. The bear then closes it with a snap. So, I think your best bet is to call the proper authorities so that they can get some help out here.
Do you know how we can do that? There's no service here.
Course there ain't. There is service just outside of town, to the east. Works whenever I go out there to make a call. Devon's heart leaps in his chest, feeling like there might actually be a quick way out of the situation. He looks in an eastward direction, ready to set off immediately. Hold on, it's a little ways out there, and it's a pretty specific spot. I can give you a quick ride there. The bear turns away and starts making his way towards the trailer. Artie glances at him, clearly uneasy about all of this. Dev is hesitant himself, because of course he would be. Anyone would be. But after everything that they've been through, Devon looks down at Cameron, the coyote still breathing steadily, looking almost peaceful. Still, fear grips the bear's chest. The fact that Cameron still hasn't woken up is slowly increasing his worry to the point of panic again. So he sets his jaw and follows the old bear. He half expects Artie not to follow, but he does, and the four of them disappear further into the trees. Cameron's agony had seemed as if it might last forever, the feeling of suffocation going on and on. But after an immeasurable amount of time, the fingers over his mouth and nostrils had dissolved into the blackness. So did the voices, diminished into indistinguishable whispers. Now his breaths come slow and steady, but he has to focus on them to consciously inhale and exhale so that it won't stop. While the experience is terrifying, the laborious nature of it almost ensures that he won't hyperventilate. After a time, the terror fades into dull, hollow desperation, accompanied by spurts of panic each time he remembers he's somewhere he doesn't understand, and that he can't seem to escape it. Then gradually, even that dissolves, and like a dream within a dream, it fades away. Cameron's vision is blurry at first, and it stays that way as his eyes remain mostly closed, unfocused. Fear hitches in his chest again before he realizes that he'd been breathing normally without the need to focus on it. That's when he notices that what he can see is a bit odd. It looks kinda like himself. Cameron stares, still feeling groggy and out of it, trying to make sense of what he's seeing. It's him, his reflection, but it's hard to understand why that's the case because it feels like he's laying down. At first, the coyote wonders if maybe this is the floor mirror in the bathroom and that he'd passed out. Still, the angle is wrong, and Cameron is left still feeling confused. The coyote closes his eyes again, trying to remember what happened last. And why is he laying on something soft instead of the cold tile of the bathroom? Nothing makes sense. So he does the only thing that he can think to do. Dev? He hears something shift around next to him. Cameron tries to clear his throat, but it's bone dry, so he swallows instead. Dev! Shit! Something is pressed to his lips, and sensing that it's water, Cameron drinks, getting several swallows before it's pulled away. Cameron then looks around, getting a full view of his surroundings. The voice hadn't sounded like Dev's, but Cameron can't imagine who else it could be, and a large, furry, brown shape moves into view. Cameron stares, at first wondering what could have possibly happened to Dev. But then he realizes what a stupid thought that is. This is a different bear altogether. He also realizes that something is definitely wrong, that either he's still dreaming or that he's in a situation he can't even begin to understand. He quickly sits up and the old bear raises up a paw. Hey, 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 it's alright, kid. I'm here to help ya. The voice is higher pitched than he would have expected from such a large creature, and the coyote feels like he's heard it before. But he can't place it. Not right now, at least. I'm Brian. What about you? Cameron. Cameron responds automatically, even though a smaller voice in the back of his head tells him this isn't right. None of this is right. Well, hi there, Cameron. You're probably wondering where the hell you are, huh? While the bear's demeanor is friendly enough, his appearance definitely is not. Again, Cameron desperately tries to remember exactly what happened last, and where exactly he might be. He nods anyway, instinctively trying to keep up the facade that he's fine, and that he doesn't suspect that everything is wrong. Well, it's a funny story, but I heard some shouting outside, and when I went out there, I found you and your friends. You were unconscious, of course. Dev? Was he a bear? Cameron looks around hopefully, as if Dev might be there with them. It's only then that he realizes that they're in a trailer, and fragments of what happened recently start to come back to him. It leaves him feeling all the more uneasy. Yeah, a bear like myself, and there was a cat too. Artie. The memories of the past day and a half come back to the coyote slowly, and with it comes a feeling of anxiety and dread. Either he's in trouble, or he was in trouble, and somehow this bear is here trying to help him. Well, I didn't get his name. He ran off just as I was getting there. Where's Dev? The bear, I mean. Is he here? Yeah, about that. The bear shifts around on the bed he's sitting on, making the springs squeak. What happened is after the cat ran off and you were unconscious, your bear friend, Devon, right? He decided to make a run for the highway to get you help. Cameron stays quiet as he tries to absorb that. The bear's sentence makes sense, technically, but at the same time it's confusing. Why would Devon leave him here alone with this bear? Now Cameron remembers that they were on a trip of some kind. A trip to Echo. The voice. The trailer. Cameron starts looking around again, trying to spot a shotgun, because now he's starting to realize who this might be. I don't... He comes up short, at a complete loss. What he wants to say is that he wants to see Dev, but if what the bear said is true, then that won't be possible. Does Devon know I'm here? Of course he does. Seemed real worried about you, said that he would have to have the cat get help, but we're not even sure where he ran off to. Why'd he run? Well... Brian pauses, seeming to think back, and also seeming hesitant to say something. Cameron tenses up, the feeling of wrongness returning. It's kinda hard to explain, but something spooked him. Recalling the events of the past few days seems to gain a momentum, and now he can vaguely remember what happened just before he ended up here. He was standing in the forest, ears down, hearing that awful static, but what exactly happened after that is still a bit foggy. What was it? Well, this might sound a bit crazy, but I've lived here a good while and sometimes there's this thing in the trees that comes after me. Thing? What an odd thing to say. But then he remembers something strange right before he lost consciousness. A dark shadow dropping on top of him before he disappeared into another world, locked in that terrible embrace. A shadow? Although he says it softly, the bear clearly hears him. Cameron swallows hard, still feeling like the situation is very off, even when considering the circumstances. But Brian smiles in a way that's almost sympathetic. Did it happen to sound like static? White noise? Cameron looks at the bear carefully before he nods. Yep, I've seen it myself. Some of us can just see things that others can't. Cameron swallows loudly. You see things too? Yeah, always could. Don't know why. Through all the confusion and terror, and of all people, this bear seems to understand what Cameron is going through somehow. It creates a sudden sense of kinship with the bear. Then Cameron remembers his phone, quickly pulling it out and holding down the power button. The screen flickers on for just a moment before multiple vertical lines of black appear on the screen, and they widen steadily before the entire display goes black. Cameron is confused, then remembers the fall into the lake, and he even sees some of the moisture still under the screen. Shit. Brian, who had shifted a bit at seeing the phone, grunts. No service out here anyway. How long ago did he leave? About 2-3 hours ago? He'd been out that long? Still, the anxiety is telling Cameron to move. To go. I think I should go after him. Thanks for your help, though. Cameron suddenly stands, but a wave of dizziness comes over him. Oh fuck. The coyote catches himself against the wall, feeling weak and confused. Whoa there, easy kid. I don't think you're in the best condition to go out there. You might pass out, and that bear seemed real intent on me keeping you safe. Cameron has to lean against the wall slightly, catching his breath. He hadn't realized that he's still messed up. It would make sense since he'd been out for so long. It's just odd that it seems to be getting worse. Whatever that creature did to him, it feels serious. Besides, I don't think you should go out there while that shadow creature is still hanging around. Been seeing it through the window a few times. Don't want to scare you, but I think it wants you. Cameron glances up at the window nearest to them. He's surprised to see Raincoat Monster just beyond the trees, partially hidden in a strange, crouching position. Strange still are the odd shivering, twitching motions the creature is making. Though its face is mostly hidden, Cameron can tell he's being looked at. Even after everything he's been through, the coyote finds himself lowering his gaze quickly. Once again, just like when he was 8 years old, he's afraid of this hallucination. Or rather, he's afraid of the imitation of the hallucination, and considering that it's moving so violently, that's what this is. You see it? No, I mean, it's something else. Oh, what is it? Sometimes I see other really disturbing stuff in this woods. Well, most places in this town, actually. It's something more personal. Cameron is caught between wanting to stay cautious of this man, but also wanting to confide in him. After the trauma of the past 2 days combined with feeling mostly abandoned by his boyfriend, the coyote is desperate for some kind of connection. What kind of things do you see? Brian looks hesitant. I don't want to freak you out more than you already are. I'm okay. I'm just wondering if maybe we see similar things. Cameron smiles at him, and that seems to throw the bear off for some reason. Huh. Well... Then he seems to snap out of it. To be honest, I see people getting killed usually. Not sure if it's real, like from the past, or if it ain't. Sometimes, it just feels like something being made up. Cameron can understand that feeling. Yeah, Another wave of weakness and exhaustion. Sorry, I'm still very tired. Cameron slides down the wall to sit again, still feeling out of it. But at least he feels somewhat comfortable with this bear now. Makes sense, after what you went through. You want my bed? I'm good. I just need to catch my breath. He's not quite that comfortable with him. This is gonna sound weird too, but I see a ton of stuff in this town, and sometimes it feels made up. Like I saw a UFO, like an alien spaceship above a body today. Brian stares at Cameron. I see. Just as he was beginning to feel comfortable, the coyote feels himself back on edge. Did he say something wrong? I mean, I don't know if it was a UFO, but it looked... You're fine, kid. It's just that I haven't known anyone else that's seen something that I've seen too. It was on that dirt road, right? Circular shape with a bunch of red lights on it? Cameron perks up. There's little question in his mind now that this bear is definitely like him. Yeah, and like... Fuck, when did that space shuttle explode? Like, the mid-80s, I think? This time Brian gives a little laugh of surprise and maybe a little disbelief as well. 86 to be exact. Damn, that's crazy. I've met a few people like you, but you're on a whole new level, kid. Cameron stares back, briefly wondering if he's still dreaming all of this. It's almost too jarring trying to understand how he ended up here with this bear. But if it's a dream, it's not the worst one. Can you help me find Devon? Maybe you could take me up the road to the highway and we could catch up to him? The bear leans back, scratching his head. I don't know about that, kid. He took off at a good pace, and I'll bet he's probably already reached the highway by now. Probably in the process of alerting the authorities. Cameron twists the hem of his shirt in his paws, feeling a sickening growing knot of worry in the pit of his stomach. He just wants to go, to run and find Dev and escape the town with him. But the threat of what's out there is very real, and Cameron does not want to repeat what happened out there in the forest. And apparently Dev already escaped without him. It makes sense why he had to leave him behind, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Only now are the memories of what happened during his blackout returning, and only now does he remember how it felt, like he'd been in hell. Can that shadow creature get in here? Nah, it seems to avoid the trailer. Don't know why. You okay? Cameron rubs his eyes with both paws. I don't know. His increasingly heavy breaths prompt Brian to crouch in front of him, patting his shoulder roughly. Hey, you're fine. I'll make you something, okay? How does some tea sound? That always calms me down. The pats jolt the coyote back to wakefulness, and he nods. If only to get the bear to focus on something other than him. Okay. Great. I'll get started on it then. Just relax for now. The wind whips in Devon's face. It's violent enough that he can barely breathe. The sirens were really the only thing that guaranteed he'd be home as soon as he possibly could. He always heeded their warnings because what they warned of always terrified him. So now, in his haze of pain and horror, he wonders why he didn't heed the warnings. The tornadoes that rip across the plains of his home state evoke a primal fear in him that few other things do. He'd felt that fear moments before his world became a red flash of pain. Before he saw Artie crumble lifelessly to the ground at the same time a pop echoed through the air. Before he was made to drink something from the plastic bottle of water the other bear had brought out of his trailer. And before his paws were tightly bound above his head. As Dev briefly comes to in the red glow of this metal container he's in, to the sound of metal chains and the feeling of cramped heat, he knows he should be doing something. He should be helping someone he deeply cares about. Lupita, Artie, Cameron. His chest feels as if it's being crushed. Devon sinks back into the darkness, even while his mind roils in terror. Even as the tornado continues to barrel right towards him. Cameron sits at the table as the bear busies himself near the stovetop with his back to the coyote. Again, the coyote contemplates leaving, either by asking Brian again or just walking out the door. Another glance towards the window confirms Raincoat Monster is still out there, this time standing high in the trees, perched on a branch, still watching. Cameron quickly looks away again. He feels deep down that if he leaves, another terrible thing is going to happen. While he believes the bear's story about what happened, something about the trailer is also extremely uncomfortable, making him even more anxious. He thinks that must have something to do with his upbringing, the long, narrow space feeling familiar in the worst of ways. It's like suddenly falling ill, and being reminded of the awful feeling one has when they're especially sick. Meanwhile, Brian is chattering on about how chamomile is particularly effective when it comes to anxiety, and Cameron vaguely wonders why he's moving around so much if he's just making tea. Mostly though, Cameron is trying to think clearly, get his thoughts to line up correctly through the fog he still feels clouding his brain. It's making him extremely tired, and a few times the coyote is certain that he's still dreaming. It's almost like he's high again, but without any of the positives of being high. His anxiety is already calming down though, despite the worry of whatever was in the forest might have done some kind of damage to his brain. He focuses his thoughts on Devon, trying to think clearly. Would the bear really leave him alone like this? He could have at least left him a message to let him know that this is what he wanted, that Cameron is safe in the situation. But Cameron also knows that wouldn't have been all that practical. If Devon was really in a hurry, which he definitely would have been, he would have left him behind if he knew it was for the best. and if he knew the situation was safe. There isn't really a way that he could have left a message anyway, except for maybe a text, but with no phone and no service. If this Brian guy really wanted to help them though, he should have gone to the highway instead. He has to have a car, right? It's not like he can just survive out here in an old trailer. Cameron fixes his face into a pleasant smile, knowing that it seems to set the old bear at ease whenever he did. Do you have a car? Brian, seemingly absorbed in what he's doing, glances back. Well, I kinda share a truck with another guy in town. He happens to be out of town with the truck right now, of course, right? Oh, okay. Brian smiles at him again. I can see why Daniel likes you. You're a friendly kid. Oh, you mean Devon? Shit, yeah. Brain doesn't really remember things like it used to. You're fine. Cameron stares at the table, feeling like that exchange was very strange, but it's hard to think through the cloudiness. Despite the dulled anxiety, the feeling is worrying him more and more. I'm actually feeling really worried. I'm so tired. Well, considering what happened to you, that makes sense. Not to pry, but do you do any drugs? No, not anymore at least. I mean, I had some weed like hours ago, but that should have worn off by now. Brian shrugs. People always say weed ain't a big deal, but it's probably what fucked me up the most back when I first tried it. Cameron listens to the sound of the liquid being poured into a cup. Yeah, I don't think I like it. But I shouldn't still be high, right? You shouldn't, but after my first time smoking, I felt high for fucking years after, even when I wasn't touching the stuff. Cameron feels a prickle of worry underneath the haze. Years? Yep, it's, what's it called? Depersonalization? Made me feel like my own paws weren't my own, and everything looked all weird and distorted, like a filter was in front of my eyes. Cameron vaguely recalls some of his own friends describing the exact same thing, even when their trip was supposed to be over. He'd experienced it himself while he was under the influence of various dissociatives. Having the same experience while he's supposed to be sober is borderline terrifying, though. Weed does that? His worry and panic breaks through the surface for a second, and it feels like, for that moment, he surfaced from the muddy depths of his confusion before slipping back under. He can't live in a dream for the rest of his life. But what even is life, sitting here in a trailer with an old, slightly smelly bear? How did he even get here? Where's Dev? Oh shit! Cameron suddenly grips the table, paws shaking as he feels as if he's lifting from his body, and he has to hold onto something to remain in place. Hey! You're alright, kid. Here, Brian ambles over to his fridge, opening the freezer, pulls out an ice tray and drops a few cubes into the mug, the ice clinking loudly. He stirs it for a few moments, then turns back to the trembling coyote. Hope you don't mind the ice, but it should be cold enough to drink now. Still confused and terrified and wanting something to do, to focus on, Cameron reaches out for the mug the bear is handing him. He takes it in a trembling paw, gulping it down. It's filled with honey and the strong taste of ginger, and it's unlike any chamomile tea he's had before. The amount of honey is surprising, and he vaguely wonders if it's a bear thing, even though Devon never seemed to have much of an affinity for it. Still, Cameron doesn't get the full flavor of the concoction until he's finished it, and as he exhales, an odd, nutty taste mixed with what Cameron can only describe as dirt lingers on the back of his tongue. Cameron frowns at the bizarre, terrible tea. He can't help pulling a face as he looks into the mug, a thick, round glob of honey remaining at the base. It's distracting enough that his panic attack is terminated before it can really begin. Brian laughs. Sorry about that. I like to add a little kava root to soothe anxiety too. Should've warned you. Cameron had thought the taste was somehow familiar, but he supposes that any kind of root would have an earthy, bitter taste. Oh, it's okay. Just wasn't expecting it. I read about kava a few times when I was looking for ways to help with anxiety. Never tried it though. Well, get ready for it to change your life. It got me off of all my chill pill meds. I do have some leftover bars if you need something stronger though. Xanax? I'll wait and see. Well, that would be nice. Cameron already feels like falling asleep, so it doesn't seem like the best idea. While he mostly believes this bear's story, he doesn't want to be completely unaware of what's happening right now. I'm guessing you have some experience with it before, huh? Uh... Cameron frowns at the table, not sure what to say. He doesn't really want to discuss his past with a stranger, even if the guy seems like he would understand. Brian puts his paw up, like he's showing that he's unarmed. Hey, I don't judge, kid. I was into that lifestyle for most of my life before I started turning things around. While Cameron is still cautious, he doesn't want to make it seem as if he's suspicious. It doesn't feel like the best idea to sour things between him and the only other person with him in the middle of the desert. Yeah, I did a bit of everything in middle school and high school. Only thing I got hooked on was opioids, though. Oof, you and half the country, kid. That's a rough one. The tiredness is starting to plateau, if not recede slightly, and Cameron feels an odd but welcome sense of empathy towards this bear. It must be the kava kicking in. Brian's face appears to be more defined and clear, and there's a warmness in his eyes. It was my first drug too. I experimented with everything else because I was trying to find something less addictive and harmful. Brian shakes his head. That's the problem with it. There ain't much out there that makes you feel that good. That's what I'm told anyway. Brian chuckles. I took just one of my dad's hydros and ended up puking my guts out for hours. Guess I'm lucky that I can't keep them down. Cameron thinks about that, about how nice it would have been if he had become violently ill whenever he tried opioids, or any drug, for that matter. Yeah, I'd say that's some good luck. I quit in college and haven't done it since, though. Good for you. Brian gazes down his nose at Cameron, starting to frown. Cameron's ears twitch as he senses a sudden change in mood. Now, I don't mean to bring this up again, but did your, visions get more intense when you did heroin? At first, Cameron wants to correct the bear and say that he's never done heroin, but then stops as he thinks back. Of course, his visions got worse whenever he was on the more reality-distorting drugs, but he had assumed, back then, that they were just agitating his already present delusions. It was only today that he'd made the connection between drug usage and hallucinations, or visions. Yeah, actually, and a few times on the other stuff too. Does that happen to you? Definitely. Again, feeling empathy grow in the coyote's chest. There are others like him, just like him. Maybe I'm not going crazy then. I can keep going back and forth on that. Brian chuckles a bit. Well, not normal crazy anyway, right? Say. Brian looks carefully at Cameron again, and the coyote is almost distracted by the glow that seems to be emanating from the bear's eyes. Oddly enough, the intensely vivid and defined fur seems to be rippling, as if blowing in the wind, even though they're inside. Is this the kava? You ever tried something more trippy, like acid or shrooms? Cameron shifts uncomfortably at the last word. Yeah, both. Acid was fine, but nothing weird happened. Shrooms just kind of fucked me up and I saw all kinds of things. That's too bad. That one can be a real eye-opener. Oh. Cameron isn't sure what else to say, feeling just a bit uncomfortable again. But yeah, most drugs make you see things. Only ones that don't are stims. That's why so many people here get into meth. Brian chuckles again. This time it sounds a bit dark. Sinister, even. Only problem with that is meth still makes you see shit. But only because it makes you go crazy. Arches in half circles. Yeah. Cameron looks back down at the table. He wonders about his mother again, and if maybe she was like him. Maybe she took the stimulants because she was just trying to stop the visions, but ended up having a different set of visions. Cameron watches the wood grain on the table shift and move slightly, like waves on an ocean. And hits him. It hits him hard. The aftertaste of the tea. Why it's so familiar. Why things are moving in unexplained ways. Why everything is feeling more fucked up by the second. He's been here before. A moment seems to black out of existence from Cameron's memory because the next thing he knows, he's already stood up, the chair clattering to the ground behind him. He stares at Brian with wide eyes, mouth open, but he can't seem to say anything. He can't think of what to say if the bear did what he thinks he did. Brian stares back, watching Cameron carefully in a way that tells the coyote that the bear isn't surprised at all by this reaction, and that makes Cameron even more afraid. The cozy, dreamy lighting of the trailer becomes more ominous, red and dangerous, and the bear in front of him seems to warp. Into a demon. No, 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 no. What did you give me? Cameron looks wildly at the coffee mug. You need to calm down, understand? What did you give me? I think you already know the answer to that, so why don't you sit down and get it together? The bear's face is so warped that Cameron honestly can't tell if it's real or not. Is it psilocybin? Did you drug me? Brian says nothing, and he's right that Cameron knows. He could never forget this feeling. Oh my god, why? Cameron is heaving for breath, the sounds of his gasping almost drowning the bear out. Sit down and I'll explain. But Cameron has no intention of sitting down. The sensations and visuals are just as bad as the last time, if not worse, and he's only at the beginning. The fear and panic reach a primal level, and Cameron is running around the table for the door. Then he's on his back, his chest, spine, and the back of his head aching. Brian is on top of him, and he's on his back. He can see the coffee mug shattered on the ground a few feet away. Cameron struggles, wheezing for breath. Let me go! I can't breathe! Brian responds by squeezing his arms tighter, leaning more weight on Cameron's torso. Stop! I'm sorry! I'm sorry! He doesn't even know what he's apologizing for, just hoping that maybe it'll get the bear to stop. Heh, and I thought you were cute when you were smiling. That statement, for whatever reason, is the scariest part of what's happening right now. He starts to scream for who he needs most right now. Devon! Help me! Devon! Devon! Shut the fuck up! Brian sounds legitimately disgusted as he pulls himself off of Cameron. The coyote prepares to scream again, but sees Brian's foot lash out and kick him in the side, sending him up against the base of the counter. Then, leaning over him with both of his giant paws on the edge of the counter, he starts kicking Cameron over and over. Cameron yelps and wheezes, the blows hard enough that he's worried that the bear is definitely going to break something if he hasn't already. He thrashes and rolls, trying to escape. Then one kick catches him particularly hard at the base of his sternum, and he violently curls up, a loud frog-like croaking noise escaping his throat. Brian pauses as the sound continues emanating from Cameron's mouth. Cameron can hear the bear breathing heavily over him as he watches his agonizing writhing. After nearly a minute, the terrible noise turns back to gasps, which then turn into sobs as Cameron stays curled up on his side, one arm around his midsection, while the other is pressed over his eyes. Brian doesn't move, just watching as Cameron cries on the floor. At first, Cameron thinks it might be better to keep his eyes closed and try to disappear into the darkness, maybe wake up if this is actually a dream. But that's when odd, glowing gold lines slightly curved behind expanding and shrinking behind his eyelids, and Cameron whines at the terrible reminder of what's going to happen. He's going to trip, and it's going to be terrible. Cameron pulls his paw away from his eyes and finds that what he sees isn't much better. The huge bear is crouching in front of him, his fur now a writhing, pulsing mass of a thing that almost seems like another living creature covering the bear. Now listen, and listen good, because what you do next might decide if I let you go or not. This is a dream. It has to be a dream. Everything that's happened, not just in this trailer, but in this whole town. It has to be a dream, a hallucination, a trick. This can't be happening. I need you to talk to some folks I used to know. If you're really one of those psychics, if you can fix my problems, I might just let you go.
Cameron!
Devon comes to again, and he blurts out the name without thinking. He's not sure how long it's been since the last time he woke up. It feels like hours, possibly even days, since he was last conscious. He'd been dreaming. Something about insects crawling and biting his arms. And tornadoes. A twisting force. He realizes then that his arms are what brought him back to the waking world. They'd fallen asleep, and now the tingling is so bad that it feels like they're covered in crawling, writhing ants made of molten lead. The bear grunts in discomfort and tries to bring them back down from above his head, but he isn't able to. They come up short, and he hears a rattling sound close to his ears, which twitch at the loudness. Chains? Devon freezes, keeping his eyes closed, unsure if whoever did this to him is close by. Although it's hard to think through all the haziness, the memories come back to him rather quickly. First, he remembers walking deeper into the woods before the strange bear went into his trailer to get something. He came out with a bottle of water, claiming it was for Cameron. Then, after walking further into the dense forest, they came upon a white van. The exact kind of van that would make most people suspicious. Devon did become more suspicious, but by that time, it was already too late. The old bear had pulled a gun on them, one that wasn't his shotgun, and told them both to get in the van. Artie started to run, and the other bear didn't hesitate to shoot him, aiming for his head. Devon isn't sure, but he could swear that he saw a spray of something, whether it be fur, blood, or worse, fan out from the back of Artie's head before he dropped. Devon's fingers and toes clench inward as he thinks about the moment. The sound. The suddenness of it. But mostly he remembers the way Artie fell. It was instant, like strings that held him up had been cut, crumbling so quickly that Devon is sure that he'd been killed. At that point, Devon did everything the old bear told him to do, including laying Cameron on the rough desert floor. Devon tries to keep from whining as he wonders if that might be the last time he saw Cameron, and then lay down in the van and letting him bind his arms up. He thought about fighting back in that moment, but it was so quick that before he knew it, he was secured and he was made to drink from the bottle. Now he's in the very center of the tornado. A twisting force. Devon clenches his eyes shut even tighter, feeling moisture gather at the corners. Around the point is equal to force times distance, and he opens them a moment later, realizing that his captor would have seen all the movements he'd made. Perpendicular to force. He's alone in the van. His eyes sting, and the bear realizes that he's sweating heavily. This metallic box he's stuck in is hot, almost overwhelmingly stifling. He worries for a moment that he's slept through the night, and now it's sunrise and he's about to cook to death in this van. But after gauging the light, he decides it's still around sunset, just a few hours after what happened. After Artie had been killed.
Shit.
Devon squeezes his eyes shut again, feeling tears leak out and into the moist fur of his cheeks. He allows himself this moment, but quickly focuses again, knowing Cameron is still out there, with that bear. That's enough to get a rise from Devon, one that builds into a wave in his chest. A combination of adrenaline and terror, but mostly fury. While the brutality of this backwoods bear invokes fear in Devon, it also makes him angry that anyone would feel they have the right to do what the old bear did. He opens his eyes again and takes in his surroundings. He's lying flat on his back, arms stretched above his head. He can feel that it's a pair of handcuffs that are holding him in place. There's enough give that slowly he's able to turn over on his stomach. The action is incredibly painful, and Devon can't help but grunt loudly, his arms feeling like they might fall off as they spasm. Slowly, painfully, he pulls himself up into a kneeling position, getting a better look at his predicament. He realizes then that these handcuffs are more like shackles, meant to hold bear-sized creatures like himself. They're bolted into the floor of the van. Devon glances up suddenly, his ears catching what sounds like a faint cry outside the van.
Cameron.
Devon's voice comes out hoarse and cracked once more. Was that Cameron? It sounded like him. Devon is still groggy from whatever was in that bottle of water, but he's sure he heard the distinct sound of his boyfriend's voice. The fact that it's now so suddenly absent convinces Devon that was definitely Cameron. He strains to listen for several more seconds, but can't hear anything. He looks down at the heavy chain linking the metal cuffs around his wrists. Unbreakable. Still, He finds himself foolishly yanking at the shackles, hoping that there'd be some kind of give in the slightly rusted chain and bolts.
Shit.
Tears filled Devon's eyes, the feeling of falling forever returning. He'd felt this way only a few times before. The first time being while he was running home, after he'd found Lupita's body. The last time being when he saw Arturo getting shot. And now, knowing that his boyfriend could be at the mercy of this bear whose intentions Devon can't even begin to guess. He just knows that they're very, very bad. But seeing the faces of those people, it changes something in Devon. A cool, icy calm descends on him, and he looks at the chains carefully. His classes in physics had taught him all about the way in which force is exerted can seemingly accomplish things that seem impossible. So even while his heart hammers in his ears, and even while his brain is clouded with a dense fog of sedation, Devon analyzes the chain and the bolts holding it in place. Torque. To be continued. Oof. Okay, so... Well, we have a casualty, I guess you could say. And... Well, Artie wasn't my particular favorite. It is kind of sad to see him go, because he was an interesting character, which kind of feels a little, how Bear put it, a little underutilized when we were talking about this. And perhaps what Devon saw wasn't exactly Artie's head being blown off, but maybe like the ear, maybe? Wishful thinking? And I'm assuming that Duke is helping Brian dispose of the body, unfortunately. That kind of sucks because you would think that Duke would be smart enough now to know not to associate with Brian, that he wouldn't want to go along with whatever it is that the bear is doing, but who knows? I mean, maybe if Artie is alive, maybe Duke is trying to get him help or something. But I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. And I sincerely hope that Devon is able to get out of the van. I'm assuming that's the van because he mentions the white van, and if you've seen Echo videos or read Echo yourself, then you know what van I'm referring to. If you don't, then go watch Echo. My whole 35-hour long playlist of Echo videos. But yeah. So I'm assuming he's tied up in there, and hopefully he is able to somehow get himself free and help Cameron, who is obviously in danger, because even if Cameron can see ghosts, I don't know if, they're gonna want to converse with Brian. I mean, he probably killed them, so yeah. I'm pretty sure, based on what happens in Echo, I believe it's in Leo's route where he's taking Chase to the cave. And again, if you've seen, the Echo videos, or if you've seen the Smoke Room videos or read either or, you know what cave I'm referring to. If you don't, then, go watch the videos. But in the cave, Brian mentions to Chase that he is frequently visited by the ghosts of the people that he's killed. So my assumption is that he wants that to stop, even though, he killed them, and they're justified in trying to come back and haunting him. But whatever, I guess. I guess even serial killers need a peace of mind. Nah, not really. But anyways, so thank you all for watching / listening. I hope you enjoyed Arches, because I enjoy doing it with my friend Bear, or Bear Burn, I guess. He's changed his name now. But yeah, it is always a delight to do this visual novel, because it means that I get to do it with him. And honestly, I like both characters. I like Cameron and Devon. I like their relationship. It's peak relationship. It's the best relationship that there is in all of Echo, meaning the Smoke Room, Echo, and this one. But yeah, anyways, so for Artie. Well, anyways, if you would like to play Arches yourself, you can find it over on Itch. and you can find a direct link to it from the Echo Project's Twitter page, which I will post down in the description. And if you would like to subscribe to their Patreon and get early access to all of their visual novels that they're doing, what is it, like 5 of them by now? Or 4, 5? Then, I will post a link down for their Patreon, and, make sure to subscribe and tell them how much you love the visual novels. And I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.